How are we, everyone? And welcome to Fuse 2021. Before we start today, I would like us all to take a moment and acknowledge country. I would like us all to acknowledge the traditional owners of lands which we're all currently zooming in from all across Australia and pay our respect to elders, past, present, and emerging. I'd like to extend that to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today as well. And also want to say that it's because of the incredible care that the Indigenous people have taken that we are now able to live, play, and on these amazing, beautiful lands. I also like to acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. I would like to officially welcome all the young people joining us today as attendees, and a special welcome to all of our delegates who are joining us from each of the state hubs, state and the territory hubs, and also on online group. And also like to welcome all the sector who may be joining today. We really today is going to be insightful, informative, and eye-opening session on what young people are thinking on these topics. Who am I? I am your host, MC Krishna C. Paksiraji, otherwise known as Kana as well. I'm myself, and I'm extremely privileged and pleasure to be here today and to lead this event. I would like to welcome you today. The way this is going to work is we're going to have the young people, the delegates, present their topics, that do their pitches to all the judges, all the panelists, and we would love for the panelists to give the encouraging comments and what their thoughts are on their ideas. All the pitches we present to the high-level decision makers, so we're excited to see what you have to say as well. So a bit of background, how does Fuse 2021 work? Normally, without COVID, it would be on a central location. People would come together and have this amazing event, but because of the times we live in, that was not possible. But the Mayan team have done an incredible job, logistical job, and they've got everyone together in their own states and territories, in their own hubs, where they've met together for the past 2-3 days, got to know each other, make some friends, learn from each other, and come up with their pitch. And we also have an online group as well. We cannot forget about them who've been working online as well. And so each of these states and hubs and this online group will be presenting their topics. And yesterday we had a huge day of learning. We had panels around First Nations rights, climate change, and mental health. And ever since then, the young people have put in hours for their pitches, and we're very excited to see what they come up with and to hear feedback. Just a bit of Zoom rules. I think we all know this by now, but please have your mic muted unless you're talking. If you like, please put your pronouns in the on your name and how like your name to be pronounced. And just as an introduction rule, if you are introducing yourself, could you please give a visual description, your pronouns, and your traditional land names? So, for example, I'm an Indian man with brown skin. I have a shaved head, a beard. I'm wearing a white shirt with a black jumper. My pronouns are he, him, and I am on the Wadawurrung and Boonwurrung lands. So that is the official start for today. Let's kick off to our first round of pitch presentations. I would like to welcome our panelists for today. I would like to welcome Commissioner Anne Hollins, who is Australia's National Children's Commissioner and formerly Director of the Australian Institute of Family Studies. So welcome to you, Anne Hollins. Thank you for joining us today. Secondly, I would like to welcome Sheena Watt, who is a Member of Parliament. She is a proud Yoda woman, also a ALP member for Northern Metropolitan Region at Parliament of Victoria and Victorian Legislative Council. So welcome to you, Minister. I would like to also welcome Morgan Krugel, who joins us as a senior campaigner at Climate Council of Australia, but she's also chair of the board of the Australian Youth Climate Coalition. So welcome to you, Morgan Krugel. And I think, I'm not too sure if Senator Nick McKim is in the chat, but he is the deputy leader of the Australian Greens in the Senate and Senator for Tasmania. Hopefully he will be joining us a bit later on today. But before we move on, I would like to welcome the first team, which is New South Wales, who will be presenting on climate change today. And to give you a rundown of how today is going to work, in New South Wales, you will have exactly 5 minutes for your pitch. And your time is precious. Make sure you use all of it and make sure you get all your points across. And we would love for the panelists, each of you, to give some encouraging comments, some feedbacks. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them as well. And we would love to get a little discussion going for a little bit. And if you have any questions for any of the panelists, feel free to pop them down in the Q&A chat and we'll get to those as well. So without further ado, I will hand it to you, New South Wales, to lead today's first pitch.
In the way back home from school, at Bankstown, a suburb you may hear about, in Western Sydney, the sky was filled with smoke. I stopped in the middle of the street. I was suffocating. I couldn't breathe. I didn't have asthma, but at that time, and since the bushfire time, I was diagnosed with problems in breathing. It's affecting me. It's affecting us.
It's affecting me. When I walk through my neighborhood, all I see is black roads, roofs, and houses. I can feel how hot it is compared to other locations that have diverse building designs. My neighborhood does not have many trees or parks and is a concrete jungle. Whenever the weather gets hot, you can feel it a lot more compared to other neighborhoods. This is a ticking time bomb. And all the cookie cutter houses in New South Wales and the houses and the concrete, it's affecting me.
My school demountables had no air conditioning or cooling. Western Sydney has no beaches and we have no public pools. And it was one of the hottest cities in the world.
I stand under 50-degree heat without shade.
My school has no demand. The water is depleting in the regions, but I can't afford to stay Sydney. The water is depleting in the regions, but I can't afford to move to the cities.
The heat.
And these are only some of the stories. 3,500 homes were burned during the Black Summer, and 34 people died. But you already know that. The statistics, the data, the science has always been readily available to you. You heard this before, but what you don't know is the solution have already been ideal and proposed by environmental groups, organizations that led by First Nation people and scientists. However, the issue is this solution need more resources. As a young person, I struggle to find things for my project. And these are the same struggles that facing environmental organizations and grassroots organizations. Their capacity and reach are limited because they struggle with funding or physical space to host events and organize, as well as remunerating experts and staff who can organize the logistics. More representation of First Nation experts and scientists needs to be seen at a higher level of decision-making process. It's time to see changes. Stop relying on voluntary reaction from business and consumers. Start coming out with more rigid policies.
As Maina outlined, we know that the barriers to resources and representation are what stop a lot of impactful solutions in their tracks. And we recognize that this is an immense issue that can't be solved overnight. It'll require conscious changes to the way that decision makers, such as yourselves, fundamentally organize and operate. However, an important place to start would be for decision makers to build meaningful relationships. Just build meaningful relationships with young people within this space, because having that dialogue where both parties can truly see each other eye to eye is how you can tailor the support you provide to these groups so they can really accelerate their work and expand their reach. So what could this actually look like? One, commits to meeting with and creating timelines for action plans proposed by youth-led groups. For example, groups such as the Pacific Climate Warriors. Two, craft a tangible plan on how you can include First Nations voices in all stages of the decision-making process. And three, create a body or a task force that can oversee the provision of assistance to the people on the ground. And what we would like of you today is to commit to a follow-up meeting with us in the new year about these objectives. We recognize that from the perspective of decision makers, yes, this may seem daunting. You're engaging with people who may not traditionally align with Western expectations of who is qualified and who is not. You're giving away the monopoly that you have had over the decision-making process, but that's what makes it important. Progress comes from listening to the people in the vanguard. Just because some people in the process can't feel the heat and the pressure now doesn't mean it won't catch up.
Perfect. Thank you so much, New South Wales team. I think that was amazing. Again, congratulations. That's a huge effort and I loved your pitch as well. We'll go over to the panelist for any feedback. Anyone like to go first? You can go, Anne.
Hi there, everyone. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where I'm joining from today, the Camaragal people of the Eora Nations. My pronouns are she, her. Am I meant to explain what I'm wearing? Black
Yeah,
shirt,
just a visual
blonde
description,
hair,
whatever you
glasses.
like.
Look, hello everyone, and congratulations New South Wales. Hello everyone from wherever you are today. I should mention I was also as a child, actually. I came as a migrant with my family, so I've had some similar experiences to many of you when I was young as well. It's so exciting to meet you all today and to hear what you've got to say, and it's such a privilege to be hearing your pitches. Just very quickly, I thought this yours was very powerful because of its personal. You took the personal sort of stance. You talked about what it meant for each of you, and then you put the voices together in like a sort of a clashing chorus, if you like, which was a little bit jarring, a bit uncomfortable, made the listener feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I think that's what you need to be doing. That was perfect from a kind of a dramatic perspective. And I just wanted to say that I think that it is the voices of young people on issues like this that are the most powerful. And so what I'm trying to do is the National Children's Commissioner, in a way, I'm like an advocate like you. I don't make the decisions, but I get to speak with those who do make the decisions. And so what I'm trying to do is to really make sure that the voices of the children and young people are heard in a more systematic way across all policy areas. And I would just encourage you to continue to raise your voice on this issue that you've pitched on today. So thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments, Commissioner. We might go to Sheena, if you would like to go next.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Sheena Watt. I'm hoping that you can all hear me. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a Yorta Yorta woman, and I'm coming to you from Wurundjeri country. And visually, I've brown skin, a fabulous red lipstick on, and some great earrings that mean that I can see you all today. Not earrings, what do you call these? Glasses. No earrings, and brown hair. And I think I'm also carrying a pretty big smile because that was a really good presentation by the New South Wales team. So congratulations, you started off so strong. Where to from here? So I have long been a champion of the power of stories, and the fact that you started with stories for me was very impactful, and you made a really strong case, I think, around the intergenerational challenges of climate change, and why people like me that are now in positions of decision making really do need to make sure that all generations and the future generations are really heard. So that message came out really strong. I really loved it that everyone was included in your pitch. There was no one sort of standing there and didn't have a part to play. So for me, that was particularly strong. You centered First Nations voices in that, and as a First Nations woman, that was really, really good to see. I loved the bit about challenging Western knowledge supremacy. For me, that was a powerhouse, and my message would be that I have long championed and challenged the fact that we have white knowledge supremacy in decision making around climate change and around land management and around fire, and that was supreme. But it did seem to me like you're coming across like I wasn't a person that held that traditional knowledge. So my only point to say is that you have a champion and ally here that is certainly not someone who holds and centres Western knowledge supremely. So that would be probably my only point, is that say. So thanks for that, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Cheers.
Thank you so much for those comments. We'll move on to Morgan. Did you have any feedback?
Thanks so much. And thanks a bunch for having me all. My name is Morgan Kurgel. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm dialing in from Wurundjeri country. I am a Caucasian woman with dark blonde, and I'm wearing a camel coat today. And you can probably hear an accent coming through. I am indeed originally from North America, which makes my voice a little bit distinctive on Zoom. I loved hearing this presentation because I have to say my literal job as a campaigner with the Climate Council is to talk to decision makers all day long, a lot of different MPs, and to try and get this very point across. But I think that you did in a way more creative than I have ever been able to do in my job. And I really tip my hat to you. It was extremely creative. I really loved the structure that you very clearly outlined those problems. I think climate change in particular can be a very intangible future problem. It's something that's going to happen to people far away and not to people in our generation. And you really cut through that and said, no, this is here today, and here's the experience that we're having. So it made it a much more compelling and urgent case than sometimes decision makers can feel like that it is. So I just thought that was absolutely phenomenal. I also liked that you really structured your solutions around the notion of resources and representation. You had this kind of clear vision for that. And other than that, the things I would have loved to hear is if you had some more specific solutions that you wanted to recommend around some of the problems that you raised. So like when we talk about bushfire smoke, do you think that we need better early warning systems for bushfire smoke so people know that they need to stay indoors to stay safe? With black roofs, do we need better codes, building codes? There's an update to the National Construction Code happening right now that we could make sure that people have that information in building and renting homes. And the other thing I'd mention just quickly that always has surprised me in my role as a campaigner is sometimes decision makers can surprise you with a problem being quite new to them. So for example, when I'm talking to people about the quality of Australian homes, I sometimes provide the statistic that more people freeze to death in Australia than do in Sweden as a result of the poor quality of our housing. That is absolutely true, but I guarantee it's shocking to a lot of decision makers that I talk to. So it's really great when you start from like a personal perspective and say, you know, this is how I'm experiencing the black roofs in Western Sydney. Then tell me how hot it actually is. And I think that you might surprise a few decision makers with those numbers as well. Phenomenal job. I loved it. As I said, the creativity really got me. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for those valuable feedback and comments to all of our three panelists. Over to you, New South Wales. Did you have any questions?
Yep. Yeah, thank you everyone for all your feedback and all your comments. Glad to hear that we've got some support and allies in the room. Always more than happy to hear that. We were just wondering, to our point earlier, would you be open to meeting again and maybe discussing a potential partnership for how we can work together to make some change happen?
I'll go and say, I think it was great that you had like a really direct ask, and I had in my notes, but I didn't get a chance to say to you, that was awesome, and I would very much be interested and already have it in my diary to follow up with you guys. So,
Yay!
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, look, very happy if Rani or someone can arrange for us to catch up after this. That would be terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And despite not being a decision maker, I'd echo the same myself. We would always love to have more voices coming through at the Climate Council and describing what the needs are on the ground. So I'd love that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good questions, putting our panelists on the spot. Could we, all the delegates, please unmute yourself and give a huge round of applause to New South Wales for that amazing effort. Perfect. Thank you. That is, New South Wales has set the standard quite high. Now we move on to our next pitch of the day. It is from Tasmania. Tasmania team, are you there? Perfect, they're ready to go. And Tasmania will be doing a pitch around First Nations rights. So over to you, Tasmania.
Can you hear all right?
Yes, we can.
January 26, 1901, the day it all began, where a white British man named Captain Arthur Phillips stood on the Aboriginal land. Now, let us imagine Australia as a shared household where one day, a mate of yours knocked on the door and stayed for the night. Without asking for your permission, but being a nice person you are, you let him in. Your mate starts using every facility there is in the household, the cup you use, the kitchen, and the toilet, and even the book that you read. Months and years go by where your mate still stays there and brings along his other mates that you don't know of. He doesn't clean the house, nor does he pay for the rent. Eventually, the house gets full and you're kicked out of the house. The house you thought was yours now belongs to ignorant people you don't know of. Now, how would you feel if that happened to you? This household where dad taught you how to ride a bike, or the memories of mom making you your first ever favorite cultural dish, gets taken away from you by people you don't know of. We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land throughout Australia, as well as the traditional land we are on, the Palawa people in Nipaluna, Tasmania. We also like to pay our respects to the past, present, and future. Till today, the First Nations are experiencing ongoing intergenerational trauma, mistreatment, and inequality from people here in Australia. Now, you may wonder, what does a young female from an immigrant background know about the experiences of the First Nations? To be honest with you, I knew nothing about the First Nation when I first arrived here in Australia, until I had to reach out and ask for my Indigenous friends why they didn't sing the national anthem, why they don't even celebrate Australia Day. Turns out the day I thought was a celebration was the day of genocide. My message to you leaders and panelists is not to just provide government funding, but to know that this is an issue that can't be solved with just money. The challenges faced by the First Nation people require mental and emotional support from leaders, as well as communities to stand with the First Nation people.
Why Australia Day should not be celebrated on January 26. Given the historic significance of that day for Indigenous people, it become one of the controversial days. The purpose of changing the date is to recognize that many people value having a special day to celebrate the place called home. Change the date.
As I experienced the similar things, I can deeply feel how it has impact on First Nation people. Due to the current situation in Afghanistan and how the Taliban took over Afghanistan, as an Afghan person, I can feel how it impacts mentally and physically, and how it will pass to the next generation by the time. When someone invades your place and country you have known all your life, I understand that you can feel displaced and have no sense of belongingness. This way, I can relate it to the experience and emotion that faced and is still facing.
One of the many problems in Australia is the Department of Education failing to implement the real history about Australia's the First Nations people in the curriculum. We need to change the way that Aboriginal history is being taught in schools. It should be taught by the First Nations people who can share their history instead of the fabricated story. We need to change the narrative about how Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are represented, and there are a lot of powerful and influential First Nations, yet we only hear about the ones who are in the prison system. Commissioner Anne Holland, you have the power to listen to us, the young people. You are in position to change. You are in position to pass the message that a lot of young people share. With powers like yours, you can help to make the stories be heard. The real story, you can make a difference.
If the owner of this land does not feel safe,
how do you expect us to feel safe? Woo! Thank you.
Amazing job, Tasmania. Oof, that had goosebumps. Very emotional pitch as well. That's a huge effort. Congratulations. We might move over to our panelist for some feedback. Anyone would like to go first?
I'm happy to go first if that's all right. My other panels, hi, it's Sheena Watt again, with the red lipstick and the big old smile, and it stayed on through that presentation from the delegates from Tasmania. Congratulations. That was really special. I am an Aboriginal woman. Days like January 26th are a day of profound trauma and grief, and for my community, and sometimes I must say we feel it alone. So it's lovely and reinforcing for the work that we do to know that there are generations of young people that are behind us in this work. And I spent some time working with the multicultural community, and that's where I found fellow travellers in the fight for reconciliation and justice. And I just loved the way you opened up with the story about the home, because Australia is really our home, and our nations are our home, and how it came to be that we are the way we are right now it's a pretty accurate reflection, actually. So good on you for finding something that can really connect the issues, which are really complex, and in a way that people understand. I thought that there was a real sincerity in the way you spoke about changing the education system and acknowledging that this is not it's not just a problem that requires a checkbook. I'm not sure who it was that said that, but that was really something. We have some very deep and sincere work to be done in our work with First Nations communities, and it's true that it's not just about someone not writing a checkbook. So Tasmania, you really hit home on some very powerful points, and it came through to me very, very strong and very clear. And I would just like to say that I really appreciate you sharing these sort of vulnerabilities about not knowing about First Nations injustice, and hearing stereotypes and things like that, and wanting to learn more and do more. So in pictures, sometimes it's not something that people do, talk about their vulnerabilities and things they don't know, but you just took that up and said, yeah, we acknowledge this, and this is something that we need, that I acknowledge, and this is what I've done about it. So I think for me, that was really powerful and really special. And knocked it out of the park. My goodness, I don't know if I can handle another one. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments, Sheena, and thank you for opening up and being more about your thoughts. Over to you, Anne Hollins.
Oh, look, I'll just echo what Sheena's just said, that it was very powerful. I thought that those opening sort of scenes were just really took us to that place of how disempowering the experiences of our First Nations people have been from the beginning, and the fundamental disrespect that was shown at the beginning, but is still being shown every single day. So, this is not just a little history story you're telling here, it is the story of today. And that's the problem, that despite all the words that we've heard, all the things that have been said, really the evidence is that not much has changed at all. And, I'm just very conscious just in the last few days of advocating on the Aboriginal children being locked up in Dondale Detention Centre. So that issue that's come up in the last few days. And, I feel so frustrated, and I feel so angry, so angry. I've just had a very angry weekend, and you've triggered me, Tasmania. So I just wanted to say that I'm absolutely with you on that. Just a couple of other comments. I thought it was really nice the way one of you kind of connected your migrant experience there, and that's something that I feel very strongly as a migrant to this country, but I don't often get a chance to talk about it. So my issue here is that as a newcomer to this country, I'm very conscious of being like a guest, if you like, or a visitor, although I've been here for several decades now, but in a way I was a forced migrant because my parents brought me as a young child. And I guess I've learned to understand that actually this is not my land. It's not the land of my ancestors. In fact, my ancestors are somewhere else. And I know when I visit the country that I came from and that my family came from, I have a very, very strong connection to those lands, even though I grew up here. So to that extent, I try to understand that connection to land that is so important to our First Peoples here in this country, and and I try to sort of connect on a personal level to the importance of that and the respect that we need to show, and that you will all have that sense of your families having come from somewhere else as well. I'd also reinforce what Sheena said about your point about the education needing to change, because I really think that's a huge missed opportunity. I'm someone who grew up in the education system here in this country where we learnt nothing about the truth about our First Nations peoples. Nothing. So I'm that generation that was left school completely ignorant. Now, we've seen some changes there, but not enough. And I just think the education system is extremely important here. And again, a very powerful point you guys made. So thank you. Very well done.
Thank you for those comments, Anne Hollins, and can definitely relate to having that connection back home. I think a lot of us in this room are either migrants or refugees, and I think we can definitely, even though we're living on these lands, we can definitely feel that it's not our land. Our lands, our ancestors are from somewhere else. And yeah, the connection to place is definitely important. Over to you, Morgan, for any feedback.
Thanks so much. And I want to echo what my fellow panelists have said. I was very moved by that, and think that whenever you're presenting around First Nations issues, then like the duty there is to communicate that there is no justice without First Nations justice. And I think you did that really effectively in everything that you had to share. So thank you so much for that. And I think, like my other panelists have said, your kind of analogy to a house that's being shared was really powerful and helps to explain a story to a modern audience that might not have had the benefit of having a proper education about this history. So you did a really effective job of that. And I think what both presentations today have done so well, which is a really hard skill to learn, is that the most important things that you can present is the very first thing that you have to say and the very last thing. Decision makers are going to form an opinion when you first walk in and start telling them about what you want to speak about. And then you leave an impression at the very end there of this is what we're asking for, or this is the point that we want to leave you with. And you did that so effectively, so that I was left thinking about it afterwards. I think that's phenomenal. I wish we had more time, because I think that with all of the thinking that you've done about this around education, around changing the date, I would have loved to hear your kind of pitches for how, as a community, do we make a new decision about where there might be a celebration of nationhood or for our country, and what would that look like? Do we even need a new celebration? How do we come to that decision? So that would have been, yeah, really wonderful. And I'm sure you have really great ideas about that. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for those feedback, panelists. Tasmania, did you have any feedback or any questions for our panelists?
We just like to say thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to really address the First Nation issue. The story that we told today is only part of it. It's not entirely the whole story about the experiences First Nation people experience. And, we just like to, we're honored to have Sheena, looking at our pitch and understanding it as well. So we just like to thank all the panelists for the best. Thank you.
You can be all mute and give a huge round of applause to Tasmania for that amazing pitch. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. And just to let you know, we might have some time at the end for a little Q&A. So if you have any questions for our panelists, feel free to pop them down in the chat or just think of it and we'll post them in the chat afterwards, because I think we might have 5 or 10 minutes just for a little Q&A. So we move on to our last pitch of the first round. And going to be honest, the first 2 pitched have absolutely knocked it out of the park. And the third pitch we're going to go for is WA, Western Australia, who are going to present on climate change. WA, are you ready?
Oh, sorry, we just had technical difficulties.
That's fine. Are you guys good to go?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Perfect. Over to you, WA.
I stand on stolen land. The traditional and rightful owners of this land are the Whadjuk people of our nation. We would like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. We'd like to pay our respects to their constant contributions and support in advocating and supporting the rights of migrant and refugee people. We recognise the ongoing injustices that occur throughout white Australia. And although we are migrant and refugee young people, we acknowledge that we sit in privilege and we benefit from a system that painfully discriminates, displaces, and disadvantages our First Nations people. This always was, and it always will remain Aboriginal land.
When we think of climate change, we think of rising temperatures, but it is much more than that. It is placing our Indigenous people in danger, causing displacement of their lands, and their cultures are lost due to rising sea levels. My name is Sarah, and today I would like to thank our esteemed leaders, guests, and fellow delegates. We will be tackling this issue of climate change, its impact, and emphasizing key strategies towards a solution. Our pitch is Indigenous liberation equals climate mitigation, including Indigenous people at the center of climate change policy and consultation, as they are the traditional owners who know their land the best. Now I will pass on to Elijah to explain the impacts of climate change.
Yeah, so generally when we think about climate change, we think of the environmental impacts, but there's also social and economical impacts. And our team has explored these impacts over the last 2 days, and we've come up with some resolutions and recommendations for them.
So the first strategy that we've devised is to generate a federal Aboriginal advisory body. Aboriginal people are the oldest living culture in the world and have been on this land for over 60,000 years. They have successfully navigated this land for generations, utilising the resources to live a sustainable life. The wealth of knowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people possess is invaluable to this country. Not to mention that our First Nations communities are one of the most affected. It is imperative to give young people a platform to advocate for their cultural connection to the land and how climate change affects their community directly. The Aboriginal Advisory Council would be conducted at a national level, as it is imperative that Aboriginal people of all countries have the opportunity to voice climate change and ways to mitigate it. Upskilling Aboriginal people will occur in a culturally safe way with implementation of consultations with Aboriginal elders. There will be no application process. Application processes are a Western standard of recruitment, and we need to stop expecting Aboriginal people to take part in this process that is designed to uphold a hierarchy and meritocracy that does not and has never in history benefited Aboriginal people.
One of our strategies are reform of the education system. A strategy for this is the Rainbow Serpent campaign. This campaign is essentially embedded in Dreamtime stories. The importance of Dreamtime stories
Now I will be talking about our second part of education, which is TAFE courses and subsidising. We need our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander youth involved in our renewable energy sector. We know that climate change is a huge problem and that our youth are going to be heavily impacted by it. The renewable energy sector is one of the many ways to mitigate climate change effects and provide employment. So what does TAFE have to do with it? Courses can be costly. To learn the skills needed in the renewable energy sector is a journey in itself, so why add costly fees to that? By having our cowed Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander youth in this area, not only are we diversifying an entire industry, but we are also encouraging our youth to participate in an area they might have not thought possible. And not only that, but they will be participating in an industry that will be far more beneficial to the land than our fossil fuels.
In conclusion, we want everyone to remember that justice across all areas will never be achieved without Indigenous liberation. The multicultural community will always stand and fight for Indigenous liberation.
Always was, always will be.
Perfect. Thank you so much, WA. Give it up for WA.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I absolutely loved how direct it was, how you guys had direct solutions that can be implemented from this point onwards. Now, I would like to pass it on to our panelists for any comments.
I'm conscious that my other two panelists have taken the honor of going first for the last two presentations. So let me jump in on this one. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I really couldn't agree more on the specificity of your solutions. Was really, really helpful to understand what your vision was in terms of the solution. And you'd really clearly thought through that whole piece. The other thing I really wanted to compliment you on was that great deconstruction of institutional bias, that I think it's so easy for people to keep doing things the way that they always have, and not necessarily to have even taken the space to question how something might be discriminatory or problematic. So when you actually call it out halfway through your presentation and say, hey, this is a problem, and here's what we're talking about, it really makes you stop and think and start to question in a way that people might not take space to do every day. So really well done on that. It was super interesting. I think that the solutions you came up with as well, as I said, were extremely well thought through, that you thought about young people and the opportunities for a different sort of education there. It is so hard once you've gone through enough years and your opinion can be somewhat fixed, that to really think about how can we start early and start to get people questioning the world and society that they see around them. Phenomenal. And the same with thinking about educational opportunities and kind of formal representation at a federal level. It was really good and detailed thinking. So congratulations. Love the work that you've done.
Thank you for those comments, Morgan. If anyone else would like to go next?
I can, if that's all good with you, Anne. It's Sheena Watt again. Hello. Wow. Okay, so it took me a while to get my head around the tech. We hadn't had the presentation, and I realised that I'm a little bit rusty on having the presentation and seeing the speakers. But I got there in the end, because I think the points that you put together on that presentation were really strong, and it was worth making sure that I read that, as well as heard the members of your team. There was an awful lot of research, analysis, and thought leadership that went into your presentation today. And I just want to stop and acknowledge that and say that that came across really clear, as well as some very really well-refined technical detail. I felt you were really clear in what your ask was. I could kind of very much work it out, or where might this fit into the broader agenda of the things that I'm thinking about as a decision maker. So I definitely moved from hearing it at a kind of a top level to actually moving into, okay, you've got me. I'm with you on the issue, but now I went, where does that fit into the agenda of the government? Where does this fit into the agenda of, decision makers? So for me, I think that was just something that I wanted to acknowledge because, as much as you can love the idea, people like me have a lot going on. And so having something that for me was really clear was really, really helpful. And it already made me think, oh, I wonder where that fits into the Climate Strategy 2030 that I talked about last week, or what does that mean for the First Nations fire strategy that we're going on about. So I'd immediately sort of moved, because of the technical detail, from believing in your issue to kind of working out where it might fit, and that I think is a very powerful thing. So if you're able to do that in a preso, that's really, really great. So congratulations, WA, really well done, and all the very best.
Thank you so much for those comments, Sheena. Over to you, Anne.
Thanks, WA. Fabulous presentation. I echo everything said by my fellow panelists. So I'll just add a few extra things. I loved your photos, just that took me right to WA. That there's such a big country out there, and I sort of responded very well to the images that you showed. And I guess it just goes to, everyone responds to something slightly different because of their, whether they're sort of visually oriented or, in other ways inclined. The other thing I really wanted to comment on was the way you linked the social, economic and environmental sort of domains. And this is not something we hear enough about. And it is my own strong view that it's often it's the intersections between different policy areas and systems. That's where the solutions are often hidden, but of course, where the solutions can be found. So it's because of the way government operates in terms of being very siloed, that's just the way of government, really, then it means that you're only ever seeing or hearing a slice. And it also means that it's really hard to get, get the attention of the whole of government at any jurisdictional level and the resources that are needed. Like if you can make the case that a problem crosses portfolio silos, and therefore the investment in the solutions, the cost of that can be shared, as can the benefits. I think that can be quite a powerful argument, and that's certainly what I took from your presentation, that it's not just one of these, it's all of these together. And but I just know that in the work that I do trying to influence decision makers, that's one of the biggest challenges I face, because senior ministers will only be thinking about their slice. People in the portfolios, the departmental people, will only be looking up at their minister. No one looks across. It's extremely hard for them to work horizontally across the sort of narrow silos. And I think, personally, pitching climate action in the way that you did is one of the most powerful pitches that I've heard, actually, because you did that whole of government sort of the breadth of the whole of government. And it made me really think about both the sharing of the costs in the investment for change, but also how we can share benefits across those portfolios. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments, and I think great points made there about their pitch. And at WA, I know you guys disconnected for a little bit, but Morgan and Sheena had nothing but good things to say about your presentation. And if this is being recorded, just a heads up. So if you would like to go back during your lunchtime perhaps and see what the feedback has been. Over to you, WA. Did you have any comments or questions for our panelist?
I just have one quick comment. Hi everyone, I'm not actually a part of the wonderful team that pitched. I'm the youth ambassador. I just wanted to call on politicians specifically to recognise the fundamental urgency to implement a federal advisory body that centralises young people's voices. Now, I know we spoke about an Indigenous body as well, but unfortunately we recognise as well, overall, young people across all diversities have been missing from policy and reform. My team delivered an incredible speech, a powerful speech because they work in policy. Young people do not recognise the power that they hold within their voices. We saw incredible speeches from New South Wales and Tasmania, and I think that within itself is testament as to how urgent we need a body to recognise young people's voices, because we're not the only diverse voices within this country. We're not the only multicultural people in this country that want and need change. And it's time that we look for that support and we actively reach that support to work towards building that federal advisory body. As we spoke about, an Indigenous advisory body is the most fundamental towards creating that local and grassroots change. And we also recognise, especially as individuals on Zoom today, that grassroots advocacy is the most pivotal towards intergenerational reform. So if there's one thing that I do want to say, it's time to put our money where our mouths are and to actually look at how we can amplify grassroots voices, because there's not enough of that. And we definitely need to all do our part. And that also extends to every panelist here today. I'm sorry to be so harsh.
No, thank you for, can I jump in there? I thank you very much for saying that. As I said, I think in response to the New South Wales pitch, that I think it is the voices of young people sort of coming out, being amplified in this way, that is the most powerful messaging ever. So I've been in my job for just on 1 year now. And one of the things that I have learned is that there are some other countries that have things like a youth parliament in place that is funded by government to do exactly what you're asking for, to ensure that in a systematic way, the voices of young people are heard on the key issues facing our country. And it is my view that there is no area of policy that doesn't in fact affect the lives of young people and the families raising them. So I think that they often, again, children and young people are a policy issue that are often siloed into one department, right? Whereas I'm trying to sort of break that out and go, okay, actually all of these areas of policy, whether it's be economic policy, whether it be urban planning, whatever, it all affects young people. So I'd be really happy to talk with you later about how we might lobby for something like as I've called it, a youth parliament, and that's what it's called in places like Scotland, but some kind of a systematic voice that can reach the decision makers regularly on these key issues.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any?
Thank you for those comments, and thank you again, Zara, for your comments. Just being conscious of time, we do have 5 minutes, but I just want to say a massive, massive thank you to all our panelists. I don't think we've seen a place like this where young people's voices have been heard to this level, and I think you can definitely tell by the pictures that these young people are very motivated, dedicated, and they're wanting to create change. And so before we leave, would you like to say any last words, any last comments for our young people?
Just thank you. It's been a real pleasure and privilege, and very nice to meet you all. I will take away the messages and the experience as part of what I do next as well. Thank you so much.
And same as, and thank you so very much for this. I think it might be what I've needed after a pretty tough week. So thank you for, filling up the cup as it is, so that I can feel strong in the work and the advocacy that I do, knowing that some of the things that I care about are indeed also cared about so passionately by young people right across Australia. So thanks.
I couldn't agree more with those comments. Thank you so much for everything that you've had to say and being so vulnerable and sharing it. I think for me, my big takeaway is that the statistics are really clear that young people vote on what's important to them, climate change and First Nations justice included, but that there's still a really large statistic of young people who feel like their vote doesn't matter or that their voice isn't heard. And so it's such a pleasure to kind of be in this environment where people are feeling confident, raising their voices, speaking very clearly about what they believe in. And I just want to say, please keep going. We need to hear it more often and in more places. So I'm so glad you've had the opportunity here. Please take it outside of this Zoom call because I want to hear those opinions again.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And lastly, a massive thank you to you, Morgan Krugel, Commissioner Anne Hollins, and Member of Parliament Sheena Watt, again, for taking time out of your Sunday and listening to these amazing young people. I think it really means a lot for decision makers at this high level, for the young people, for them to listen to and voice their ideas too. Again, thank you so much. And young people, incredible job on your pitches. I am absolutely blown away. I think for the other states and the other groups, it's very high expectations. We are going to go into a lunch break. We'll be back around 1:45. So feel free to turn your cameras off, have some lunch, and we'll be back at 1:45 for the second round of pitch presentations. Thank you again so much for our guest. Perfect. Welcome back, everyone, to Fuse 2021, to our new guests who have just joined us. We're very fortunate to have you. And just as a heads up, we just had lunch. So some of us may be eating and some of us still might be getting around having coffee or tea. That's perfectly okay. So we are going to go into a second round of pitches, which will be around mental health and discrimination. And to give our panelists a bit of a background, the young people, the delegates who we are calling them, they've gathered in their own little hubs. So we have state-wise hubs, territory on an online group, and they've all been working on a topic over the past 3 days where they've met in person, made connections, learned from each other, and shared their knowledge to come up with a pitch for today. So first of all, we are going to kick off with the online group. And to give you a rundown on how this is going to work is the online group, you will have 5 minutes on the dot to do your presentation. And just remember, 5 minutes, it is a long time, but it's also not a long time. So make sure you deliver everything that you need to in those 5 minutes. And after that, they're presented, we would love for the panelists to give some encouraging comments and some feedback onto their pitch. And we want to get a little discussion going for a little bit. When we are introducing ourselves, I would love the panelists to give us a visual description, their pronouns, and their traditional land names. To give you an example, I'm a young Indian man with a shaved head, a light beard. I have a white shirt on and I'm wearing a black jumper. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm currently on Wadawurrung and Boonwurrung lands in the west of Naarm. In the east of Naarm, sorry. No, the west of Naarm. Correct me if I'm wrong. I need another coffee at lunchtime. So I would like to welcome our panelists for today. First of all, I would like to welcome Elsa Rosenberg. Elsa is a queer, Jewish, and Chinese woman of color. She's an educator, facilitator, activist, and performer. Elsa is a co-founder and director of HUE, an anti-racism and social justice organization that provides training and consulting. So welcome to you, Elsa. Perfect. I would like to welcome our second panelist, Katrina Georgie, who is the CEO of the Foundation for Alcohol Research and Education and works with local communities, governments, researchers, and health professionals to prevent alcohol harm by developing evidence-informed policy, enabling people-powered advocacy, and delivering health promotion programs. So welcome to you, Katrina. Perfect. And I'd like to welcome Shadow Minister Amanda Rishworth, who is a member of Federal Labor's Shadow Cabinet as Shadow Minister for Early Childhood, Education and Development, and Shadow Minister for Youth. So thank you for joining us, Shadow Minister. Perfect. And I'd like to welcome our last panelist, the Honourable Assistant Minister Luke Howarth, who is a Member of Parliament. He is the Assistant Minister for Youth and Employment Services and Federal Member for Petrie. Thank you for joining us, Honourable and Assistant Minister.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Perfect. We have an amazing set of panelists, and I think we're ready to kick off. So online group, over to you. And to give you a better background, the online group have worked strictly online. They haven't had the pleasure of meeting up in person, but I'm sure they'll do a good job. So over to you, online group. You have 5 minutes.
What will it take for culturally sensitive and trauma-informed practice to be mandatory across youth-focused government and non-government sectors? Intergenerational trauma isn't easy to talk about, but I had adults that could help me identify it and learn about how it affected me. Sadly, not everyone has this support, and often young people from diverse backgrounds are left to process this trauma and their current barriers as best as they can on their own. It is crucial for staff who work in these environments to at least have a general understanding of what intergenerational trauma is and how it affects people's social and emotional development, learning, and overall well-being. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's not a situation where one solution applies to all, but we can create opportunities for change. We need to collaborate with you, our leaders, on common ground and ensure that cultural sensitivity is just as significant as workplace health and safety.
Being brown, having dark hair, and having a different accent speaks my color of difference to others in Western society. Intergeneration trauma has physical, familial, social, traditional, and cultural effects that link to insecurity we face being from an ethnic background in different countries and different environments. Being a young person from a refugee and migrant background, growing up in Australia, I experienced more social distress and peer pressure to participate in drug and alcohol due to Western idea of youth culture, not having enough opportunities and wanting to fit it in. Subjects such as trauma, stress, and depression are not something that we discuss in our home because we never discuss this thing in our culture. Because of this difference, migrant and refugee, including young people, are facing racism and discrimination. Yesterday, from the First Nation representative, I learned the difference between acknowledgement and welcome to the country. As a migrant and refugee, we want to feel that we belong as we came here in search of that feeling. However, since landing in Australia, the system in place had failed us. Therefore, we are appealing for equal rights and accessible support, providing the right information whilst acknowledging the different languages. Also, recognize the skill set of individuals not holding their citizenship, as we all deserve to feel that we belong to Australia.
My skin speaks of social privilege, yet my name speaks otherwise. Struggling to relate to my own people and the Western Australian ideal causes an identity crisis loop. Cultural competence means to accept the differences each youth brings to the table and making those accommodations that are needed. Being first generation has its privileges, yet it also means that I'm having to explain my headscarf, my ancestry, and carrying the weight of inherited anxiety in everything I do. Would you enjoy seeing your child approached by peers, poked and prodded about the smell of their lunch or the color of their skin, while witnessing the introduction of trauma in their life for the first time? We are asking for equal opportunity for migrant, refugee, and First Nations youth in employment and schooling sectors, and funding for youth leaving the justice system to aid them in reconnection. We want organisations to have cultural awareness and opportunities for people from culturally and linguistically different backgrounds with fair treatment.
I often think of my ancestors. In another classic move of the genocidal white colonizer, my ancestors were indentured. Their contracts promised good wages, working conditions, and transportation arrangements, but these were all sorely unmet for another system of glorified slavery. Their worth and health as human beings is not equivalent to the commodity of cassava and sugarcane. Intergenerational trauma lives on in my blood. My mother arrived on this unceded Indigenous land, having to raise 2 children, working 3 jobs 7 days a week, only able to afford to survive more servitude. What about her mental health? Why do we uphold these capitalistic systems of 9 to 5 that overburden people that were placed on this earth just to be? My depression and anxiety empowered me to pursue clinical mental health, but being in the sector, I realized that the Western healthcare system was more of the same racist and empty promises and not intrinsically safe for us. The system is not working. We want intersectional people from BIPOC, neurodiverse, LGBTQIA+, disabled communities with lived experiences and expertise of intergenerational trauma to be leading the conversation and encouraging healing. We want white Australia to check its privilege, to recognise spiritual health and medicine practices as essential alongside clinical care and diagnosis determinants. The system is not working.
Our mental being is dynamic. It can change from moment to moment depending on the issues one may be facing. As an immigrant who has lived in Australia for almost 2 years, I found myself isolated and dejected because I didn't fit in socially due to culture shock and anxiety, because I was and will always look different everywhere I go. It goes without saying, there is no health without mental health. And coming from a migrant family where my parents have had trauma they have faced, and being unable to express myself and themselves freely has given the same impact on me. And I'm trying to break the stigma by being able to share my thoughts today. One solution regarding mental health does not fit every mental health issue. Thus, the solution starts within us, being able to communicate our needs to our friends and family, community, and getting all the support we need, which should be easy to access, and it should be safe space where we can freely express ourselves.
Perfect. Thank you so much, online group. Can we get a round of applause for the online group? Thank you. Love the support. Yes. Thank you. We might get the PowerPoint to be put down if that's okay. Perfect. Thank you so much for that pitch. And I definitely relate to that. I think us being a lot of members here being either from a refugee or migrant background can definitely relate to the intergenerational trauma that does go on and the lack of conversations around them for us, including our parents and for our ancestors. So I will throw it to our panelists if anyone would like to go first to give any comments, any feedback that they have for that pitch.
I'm happy to give some feedback if you want.
Mm-hmm. Feel free to introduce yourself as well.
No worries. I'm Amanda Rishworth. I've got curly hair, glasses. That's how usually people see me. And I am coming to you from Ghana country, and it's she, her as my pronouns. So look, I just think that was a really wonderful presentation. I think it highlighted, a number of things. I think it highlighted and some of that intersectionality, which is really important, but that historical context that I think a lot of organisations, and I think it was highlighted both a range of different organisations, including the healthcare system, but other systems as well, are not always, I think, aware of some of that historical. So I think you've done a really good job at highlighting those different experiences. And I think you've done really well at likening it to occupational health and safety and how important cultural awareness is about sitting next to that. My question would be, had you given much thought to how you might intersect some of that awareness, whether it's into the mental health system, which we were talking about, into the health system, or into other organisations, to get those organisations with a bit better understanding of some of the really important issues you've highlighted, and what your thoughts were around embedding in that in some of, I guess, the organisations throughout Australia.
Thank you for that. Online group, we'll go through all the panelists' feedback, and then if we can answer the questions back. Over to you, Elsa.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So my name's Elsa. I use she, her pronouns. I have olive skin, dark black hair with blonde at the ends, quite young, and I'm wearing a white sort of pinstriped long sleeve top. And I am joining from Bunurong country today. I've actually just spent a couple of days down on Gunai Kurnai and Bunurong country, and have just sort of driven back and found a mate's place to set up because I was really excited to hear your pitches today. I really, really loved a lot about that pitch. I really liked that there was a really holistic approach to what the issues are that are impacting our communities and our mental health. And I feel very much like you each drew on your own unique lived experience to shape those ideas. I also really liked that you had a bit of a combination of, you know, within the system changes you would like to see, and also ambitious out of the system things that you would like to see. So, you know, I love how you said, yeah, we would like, you know, practitioners to have more cultural competency, and also we would like an end to capitalism so that we're not all terribly exploited by this system. I think that that's really important. And, you know, I love that you're not selling yourselves short by just aiming for, you know, what decision makers or organizations might deem as like realistic, because I think that it's far more meaningful to do it, to be more ambitious. I thought that I also really liked how, and I felt you did this a little bit more as we went. I think often when we have conversations about our communities and intergenerational trauma, it can come from a really deficit model that speaks as if our communities are at fault for the trauma that we have, or the lack of conversations we're able to have about mental health. And I really loved how I felt as you got further along in your presentation, particularly, I really felt that lens move more into a, you know, we are actually in these contexts that we're in because of the violence and harm that has been directed to our communities, and because of the lack of resources and funding that are given to these spaces. And I think that's a really important shift in narrative, because so often we take the blame for those things as if it's an issue that our communities have created, which is obviously not the case. What I would really like to hear consolidated is like your sort of action points or your ask points. I think they were distributed among each person, which I just found a little bit more challenging to be able to like hold in my mind. So when we come back, I would love to hear sort of each of your asks, the most ambitious to, you know, the most accessible, all kind of together in one go. That would be awesome. But yeah, awesome job.
Perfect. Thank you for those. Thank you for that feedback. Also, I think the online group will really appreciate that. I think you have your mic unmuted. Over to you, Luke Howard.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm Luke Howard, Assistant Minister for Youth and Employment Services in the Australian Government and Federal Member for Petrie. I want to thank the Multicultural Youth Advocacy Network and everyone online today, all the young people online, for what you do for the country. For those that have just made the pitch with the online group, to Kin, Ramessa, Genevieve and Rabi, thank you very much for what you had to say. I think one of the speakers mentioned about trauma, stress and depression not always discussed at home, and I can understand that as well, but I did learn a lot from what those four speakers had to say, so I want to thank you for that. A question would be, you know, how we would help educate employers, particularly private sector employers, where 80% of work is found, to be more culturally aware, and to make sure we're providing a safe workplace as well. So I might leave it at that. From the Australian government's point of view too, I'd like any feedback too on programs that we've got, like the Youth Transition Support Services, where we investing some $12.7 million to help young humanitarian entrants. And because Australians are diverse, about 30% of Australians now are born overseas, it's really important to know whether that funding is being spent well and what people have to say about that if they've worked with that. And also our Transition to Work program, which is helping some 41,000 Australians as well. I'd be interested to hear your feedback on those Australian government programs. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for those comments, and also for welcoming any feedback that the young people will have. And then we'll get to those questions later. We'll go on to our last panelist, Katrina, for your feedback.
Thanks, Tano. So my name's Kat, and I'm the CEO of the Foundation for Alcohol Research and Education. My pronouns are she, her. I have black hair to just below my shoulders. And if you were seeing me in real life, many of you would be much taller than me. I'm about 5 foot flat. Thanks very much to my fantastic, very little Italian parents. So I also just want to let you know that I'm joining you from Wiradjuri country. I just really want to thank you to each of you, because it's really hard to share a personal story. And I think sometimes we take for granted when people share. And I know working in advocacy, we're increasingly asked to share our experiences, or to have people who've experienced things, particularly when it comes to alcohol use, to share their stories. And every time when you do share that story, that brings up feelings. And so I just want to say that that's really amazing. And it was those stories for me that really brought home something that's actually quite complicated. Like, we love having a lot of jargon about everything when it comes to policy. And when we talk about things like cultural sensitivity and cultural competency and intergenerational trauma, it was your experiences of that that helped to bring those things for life for me. And I really, really appreciate that. I just was reflecting when you were talking about the fact that I work in a health space, and I still go into lots of rooms where the majority of people who are making decisions are older white men. And I think that, you know, that we are diverse. As Luke said, we're all very diverse, and there's a lot of diversity in this country. And so representation really does matter. And making sure that we have lots of people in the room who are very diverse from different backgrounds, because I will never experience what you experience and I'll never understand that. But for us being able to share that, that's really useful and really helpful. And with your solutions, I agree with Elsa, the variation of the ambitious, huge big picture solutions and the tangible ones was really great to hear. And for me, I think sometimes when we're talking about these things, because they're so hard, we can make them sound really complex. And like it's a huge problem, and how could we ever address this, because we haven't been able to address it for so long. I'm sorry if you can hear it, crying baby in the background. I've got many small children around today. But it would be really great if with all of those solutions, you could pull it back and go, and, you know, the thing that we can do tomorrow, the first step that we can take is this thing. Because often decision makers like Amanda and Luke hear so many different things from so many different people. And so to hear that one tangible first step is just really great. So then people can go, okay, I know this is huge, but I know the first step I can take. So I'd love to hear from you what that first step would be, if you had a chance to share that with the decision makers here today. So thank you again. I'm already super inspired. It's amazing.
Thank you for those comments to all our panelists. And when young people, the online group, if you have any feedback, we may not have time to go through all the questions, but maybe if you would like to give your feedback or your any questions that you have for our panel as well.
Sorry, just to add in, this popped into my head. In regards to what I said before, so cultural sensitivity is just as significant as workplace health and safety. I was thinking of the day-to-day practice where we have sort of like inductions that we have to complete as a mandatory thing when we come to work, when we first start a role, or just like regular updates. I was thinking of relating that to that, and, you know, cultural sensitivity training, although it may not solve everything, I feel like it should be something that's just as mandatory as workplace health and safety. So that means like getting all staff members to participate in it, because at the moment, upon reflection in my volunteering roles and in my working roles, staff only seek it out if they really want to personally seek it out, and if they remember to, and also if they know where to go to get, you know, the adequate training. So I think it would be really helpful if it was implemented as like a thing that we all do. But yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. We may have time for one more comment, because we do have 2 more pitches to get to. So someone from the online group would like to go.
I'll go. I think for me, like my ask would be very like big picture and like intersectional, and like that's sort of where we came from, because when we were talking as a group, it's like, you know, we're siloing like mental health and racism and First Nations rights and climate change, but everything interacts so much, and you cannot talk about like one thing without the other. So give back sovereignty to Indigenous people tomorrow, do it, because everything interacts, and like the system that we have, this current healthcare systems, these education systems, it's not working. And like, if you cannot do that, then like put us in charge, you know, because we're able to do that because we see it and we feel it and we experience it.
Thank you. And Rumesa, I know you had free in the next 30 seconds if you could.
I just wanted to quickly add in how so involving more youth, First Nations youth, to sort of assist in in employment, so selecting like cold friendly workers and actually having everyone involved in the decision making. So I've heard the word co-design a lot. So yeah, that's basically where I was coming from in terms of like transition services as well. Yeah, just like making it more promoted, so like bringing more awareness to those programs, because not everyone will know it or trust the system. That's a common theme. Tend to sort of just do what your parents know, and that tends to be away from systemic processes. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you to the online group. Could we please give a massive round of applause to the online group? It's definitely not easy to do it in person, online. So a massive, massive congratulations to you. Now we're moving on to our there you go, loud rounds of applause coming through for the online group. Okay, we'll move on to our next group. Queensland, are you ready to go? Ready to go. Over to you, Queensland. You have 5 minutes.
We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we stand on, the Turrbal and Yagara people, and pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. Sovereignty has never been ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Talafalava, my name is Maria.
Kodeo, my name is Rachel.
Salam, my name is Rahim.
Salam, my name is Rahila.
Single, my name is Patrick.
Guten Abend, my name is Manuela.
I consider myself emotionally vulnerable. The experiences I've been through and still go through have shaped my well-being. I have not healed because I continue to be triggered by incidences, call it PTSD. I feel lost in this new world called Australia, separated from my family and disconnected from my culture, not by choice. My mental health and my well-being is personal to me. I don't trust it with everyone, but the right people. Now, who are the right people? The question I ask, not my family, they're not here. I've not seen them in 8 years. Not my friends, they won't understand. Mental health does not exist. Then leave the health professionals. They will sympathize but not empathize. I'm alone. Surviving since the age of 15. I don't know how to live. I don't know how to be a young person like other young Australian people. With the expectation and the responsibilities, I'm forced to be older than I am. To sustain myself and my family overseas. Who is supporting me? I ask you. I'm filled with negativity as the land that I rent to does not want me. How can I live? I'm tired. I cannot heal. I try to seek for help, but there is no right place for people like me. My psychologist said, I have so many problems for a young girl my age. The services are systematic. No one is going to care. There's no ongoing care. Please help, please help.
How can we heal with the ones that broke us? The ones that will never know the history of our mother tongue or the weight we carry in our eyes. See, you cried the day you had no shoes, while we cried the day we lost our feet. Submerged in the sea of our problems, drowning, we never feared the daily rain. Our sanity was stolen, slowly, from misplaced thoughts to mania. We have no voice, yet you still expect us to scream. It seems that our lives only matter when we finally become statistics. Our trauma transferred from our ancestors. Please don't let it transfer to our children too. Our roots have been uplifted from our homes. Won't you help us plant them here? We have fallen, but together we will rise again. Everyone is the architect of their own future, but we still need our builders, our leaders, and a damn good plan.
mental health, and racism. As a future generation, we are tired of just sitting here and talking about it. We don't just want to be heard, but to listen. Racism is a mental health issue because racism causes trauma. What do we want? A place where everyone feels safe to open up to and feel connected. We need more multicultural youth in power. There should be more inclusive health professionals. We need interactive cultural training delivered in a culturally responsive way. We should be encouraging our cult communities to work in health space. This allows for our stories to be heard in our own words. As our leaders, you are running out of time. We are under no obligation to be the same person we were a year ago, a month ago, or even 10 minutes ago. We have the right to grow. Mental health is not a destination, but a process. It is about how you drive, not where you're going. Enough is enough. Do the work. This is what we want.
We want more young multicultural in positions of influence and diverse health professionals. This will first allow our stories to be told by us and to be heard, and will lastly create more programs run by our people for our people.
Cultural competency training delivered within schools and workplaces needs to be more personal and less of a tick-the-box approach, not a lecture, nor a course, but a conversation. This will foster a sense of acceptance, connection, normalization, and turn the divide into the diverse. Live our experiences, change our future. The cycle ends with us.
That was amazing. Give a round of applause to Queensland. Amazing job, Queensland. Very, very, very powerful. Could feel the energy through the screen. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'll pass it over to our panelists for any feedback. Anyone would like to go first?
I'm happy to jump in. So it's Elsa speaking. Thank you so much, Queensland. I really loved hearing your pitch, and I particularly love the way that it was presented. I think especially when we are talking about understanding our experiences within our cultural context, I really loved that you threw away a lot of the rigid standards of whiteness and professionalism that often get put on us as an expectation when we share our ideas. And I think that was a really beautiful way to embody our truths and our cultures and our realities into the way that we communicate as well. I felt that not only at the beginning and as the styles that you used as you presented, but even ripping up the piece of paper at the end. I think there's such an emphasis on the written word in, white cultural context. And I just love how much of that you threw in the bin in that presentation. So I think that was awesome. I also really loved, I think what you did really powerfully there were a couple of things I wrote down. I really love the phrase we have the right to grow. I think that's a really beautiful way to speak about what we deserve, not what we lack or what we don't have, or that deficit model sort of thing of being and is also so accessible. We have the right to grow. I think that was really powerful. I also really love the phrase, that people, only care about our mental health when we become a statistic. And I think that really speaks as well to some of the challenges that we have when we are pitching to predominantly white, middle class, decision makers and leaders, that often we can only get those leaders to care when we are a statistic or when we act like a statistic, when we are really this is, putting lived experience or our trauma on a silver platter for people to be able to understand and to trust us. And I think that you kind of avoided that really, really beautifully and utilized so many other skills, strategies, and approaches in your pitch, which I really, really love. I think one thing that I would really like to hear about, which I feel like you sort of alluded to as well, around like leadership and understanding in our communities, and maybe this is across a couple of different pitches too, that I think there's been a real push for like cultural competency sort of training among the professionals that exist. And I'm really also excited to hear about what it would mean for our communities to actually be leading those changes, or to be, you know, to be able to get therapeutic and healing care from within our communities, and what it would like to harness that leadership rather than just training people externally. And so I think there are ways that you kind of touched on different ways. I'd love for that to be out even more, because I think there's so much power in our communities. But I think you did a really awesome job. So yeah, thanks. It was a privilege to hear.
Thank you for those wise words, Elsa, and for that feedback. We might go over to Honourable Luke Howarth, if you're there.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you very much. Thank you to Fuse from Queensland. I really enjoyed your presentation. As the previous panelist said, it was full of energy, it was very passionate, and the experiences that you've had really came through in the way that you presented. So one of the panelists spoke about, one of the Fuse members spoke about being emotional and having PTSD and hadn't seen a family in 8 years, and it just, and not having ongoing care. And it sort of brought through to me the fact about how we need, that life is about relationships, that we need strong relationships in our lives. And I also, the other theme that I picked up on was the cultural competency training in the workplace. I think that many workplaces are time poor, that they don't address those needs. And that really came through to me, the need for workplaces to talk about cultural competency training and to make sure they understand their employees, so that I guess the workplace is more harmonious and they have better staff, because that's a real issue at the moment. Many workplaces around Australia through COVID can't find enough workers, particularly with international borders just opening up. And from my point of view too, as Assistant Minister that's been working on the youth policy framework throughout Australia, it's about that all voices matter. And through the youth policy framework, we're doing a series of roundtables at the moment, and the viewpoint that you've just put across will put into that work. So thank you, Queensland. Very good.
Perfect. Thank you for those words, Honourable Assistant Minister. We would like to go over to Katrina next.
Thanks, Tano. I echo everything that's been said, and particularly around how this pitch, I felt like at times I was listening to poetry, and at times I was, you know, being engaged by performance, and at times I was being compelled by evidence. And it's really hard to do all of those things in a pitch. And you used everything. You used the fact that we could see you, the fact that we could hear the tone of your voice, all of the different skills that you have to come together and share that. And that was pretty amazing. So thank you for that. I loved also how it started with people sharing their personal experience. And again, thank you for doing that. And then switching to solutions. And you felt that switch happen and that focus come to light. And the thing that would be great is to hear what the world looks like when these things are achieved. And again, sometimes it's difficult to get that vision for what it looks like when there are people in the room who are sharing these different views, when there is proper cultural competence, when we are considering these things in the ways that we need to, when policy is being developed with full consideration of all of these things. And so painting that picture in the way that you painted this vivid picture of the problem and started to transition to the solution, painting that picture of that world and the way that the world that we all want to be part of looks like. You know, that's the thing I want to hear. I'd love to hear what does it look like when we achieve these things? How do people feel? What does a workplace look like? So thank you to everyone in Queensland. It really was really inspiring. And I also just want to pick you all up and take you to every single one of my meetings. It's just these sorts of voices that really need to be heard. And yeah, it's amazing. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for those wise words and that good feedback. Over to you, Amanda Rushworth.
Well, thank you. And I would just echo what many of the panelists have said. It was an incredibly engaging presentation. And I would say that even the theatre behind whoever was speaking showed that you were really united and really a team. And I think that collaboration, as well as the engagement of whoever was speaking at the time, really came through as a united voice. Despite all your different experiences and your different contribution, it was a really united pitch, and I think that really cut through very well. I would also agree that it was a very, it took us on a journey, and I felt that journey from that, what are really the problems, escalating up to the solutions, and some quite specific solutions which were really useful. What really struck me though was that you didn't come, just as someone else has said, from a deficit model. You really spoke about having the space to be able to share your stories with others that understood would be such a powerful thing for you, whether that was in a mental health context, whether that was in a community context. But they're not just sharing those stories, but taking those stories and turning them into leadership opportunities, and how powerful that would be. And for me, I think that are some, sounds like a really simple solutions, but something we haven't got right yet. And thank you for sharing how important that would be and what that could mean if we did provide that. And I think coming from a real strengths-based model, as opposed to a deficit model in some of those solutions, was really powerful and important, and something that I really took away as part of the solution to addressing these issues within communities. So I'd just like to thank you all. It was such a good pitch, and I guess really the only feedback I'd give going forward is really how do we really build that into different contexts. We've talked about really health professional context, but how do we build that into society-wide context, not just employment. We know there's lots of other education, a whole range of things. So how do we really practically build that into all contexts across communities? So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for those comments, Shadow Minister, and thank you to all our panelists for that amazing feedback, that insight and that feed-forward feedback. Over to you, Queensland, for any comments.
Comments? I'd like to answer a question that Elsa mentioned earlier about the culturally responsive practice training. I've taken a step as a young person to co-facilitate that training within an organization here in Queensland, and I've got an opportunity to go out there to external service providers and share my journey as a refugee, and that has impacted and shown them a way how to work closely and how to work appropriately with people from multicultural and multicultural background, refugee cult background, sorry. Yeah, so what I wanted to put across today, the training is there, but it's still on law and it's not funded enough. But as a young person and as a part of a young people group, we're doing something already down there in the communities, but it needs a little bit of funding to happen on a bigger scale. Thank you.
And just one more thing as well, thank you for all the panelists who came. It was really nice for you to give us all that feedback and everything. And we would love to come to your meetings. So just in general, it would be nice to just have a further discussion, because we only have those 5 minutes to try and convince you. And future only happens when you really put in that time and effort. So we'd love to reach out to you and speak to you if you have a free. I'll get you a coffee.
Thank you so much for those comments, Queensland, and definitely a good follow-up as well. And change cannot only happen in 5 minutes. It is a long process. Thank you for that. Can we give a huge round of applause to Queensland for that amazing pitch again? Perfect. Now we have the last pitch of the day. Victoria, I can see you're ready to go. Last pitch is from the Victorian delegates. Over to you, Victoria. You have 5 minutes on the clock.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
1 minute, we're just whipping up the slides quickly.
Awesome. I can start off there. Hey everyone. Hey friends. We're calling today from Nam in Victoria. And yeah, I think we've built such an incredible kind of community and collaboration over the last couple of days. And I hope we can kind of really continue that meaningful engagement and collaboration moving into the future. Yeah, to kind of continue with the amazing food analogies, we've been having such juicy and delicious conversations, and I hope we can continue to marinate on that and continue to have these meaningful dialogues moving into the future. Cool, so before we begin, I just wanted to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Wurundjeri people, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and future. And particularly as we're talking about mental health and the education system, I just also wanted to acknowledge that these systems and the frameworks and narratives that inform them are built upon settler colonial structures which purposefully exclude, marginalize and pathologize First Nations and culturally diverse perspectives. Yeah, I just wanted to add that these Western frameworks maintain knowledge, maintain what knowledge is valued. Yeah, even these discussions around having cultural competency in organizations, cultural competency still appropriates and views people of color as objects and statistics rather than actually meaningfully having a dialogue with these communities. And so I think that in moving beyond these colonial systems which perpetuate daily violence and racism for people of color, we need to really center the First Nations healing, resistance, community, and self-determination, which has already been occurring on these lands for tens of thousands of years.
I think we can all understand that mental health is a difficult and complex journey we all battle with every day. However, there are extra barriers for multicultural youth with the cultural stigmatization of being seen as crazy, feelings of shame and guilt. This makes it harder for young people to get the help that they need due to the inaccessibility of services, money, distance, and the personal anecdotes that Queensland and the online group have shared, which really show the detrimental plight that we are all suffering due to the failures of the current system. So due to that, this exacerbates the lack of the mental health literacy and the existing stigmatization.
So what can we do? What is the solution here? What we're proposing is to bring these services to young people and leveraging existing structures through school systems to provide culturally safe environments for young people to not have to face external barriers, be it their family, the stigma in the culture, or any other barrier that would stop them from accessing help. We want to create a sustained service and a wraparound support system where expertise is drawn from the community and from trusted elders of that community to provide culturally appropriate treatment at the right time. So we are targeting primary schools and young children so that we provide early intervention and improve mental health outcomes for youth in general. This program would also act as a live tracker of the mental health status in Australian schools.
Now, some schools have already started to take upon this idea. My school, for example, we were lucky as a private school to have the opportunity to have nurses who are well educated, psychologists, wellbeing teams, public speakers. However, they didn't often understand the different barriers and experiences that culturally and linguistically diverse young people face, as well as young people from migrant and refugee backgrounds. However, a lot of communities have realized these issues and have taken upon themselves to create these spaces to help our young people. However, this is a failing upon the government and the education system. It is their responsibility to provide these services for us. Now, we've talked about how some already exist. So for example, Headspace has a program called the Koori Support Group for Indigenous Australians aged 12 to 18, and in other places, it age varies between centres. And instead of being a clinical mental health service, it allows mental health issues and improving mental health outcomes through connection to culture, community, connecting with elders and language. And so our idea is that we take advantage of these services, the time and energy that other people have already put in place for these programs, and instead make it available to everybody. So as we've talked about, some schools have things, some schools don't, some programs exist. However, it really depends on where you live. So this is why we believe that it's the federal government's responsibility to create and organize these. So then not only is each state equal, each school is equal, and so everybody has the access to these services.
Thank you so much, Victorian group. Can we give a huge round of applause for the Victorian delegates? Perfect, team. Love your star, by the way. I think you guys are all shining stars in your own right. Perfect. So we might go over to the panelists for any feedback that they have on the pitch. Anyone would like to go first? We might go to Amanda.
I can go first if you want. Look, I'd just like to thank you for that presentation. I think it was a really good presentation about, firstly, taking it back to some of the antecedents of some of the issues. You know, we always talk about mental health, and often some of those things have escalated so badly because of all the coexisting factors. And you were really able to say, well, let's get in there earlier, and and you're really good at identifying one of the key places we can play a really important role and intervene early, and that's at schools. And what I also really liked was drawing on some of the research. Obviously you drew on the Royal Commission and some of the other issues, but also really importantly called for a standard across everywhere, that everyone has the right to the same level of service and same level of support. And I think that was a really good part of your presentation, to be saying, you know, yes, acknowledging where there are some good programs, but say, look, everyone deserves to have that. So I thought that was a really good part of your presentation as well. And I think the final, I guess, comment I would say is that drawing on all your experiences and all your knowledge, you were able to have, once again, a very forthright position of what you wanted to see and who was responsible. And I think that detail, when you're calling for something, to be able to say, this is what we want and this is who's responsible, being the federal government is responsible for this, is really important in making sure that people in leadership positions go, oh, that's someone else's responsibility, or someone else, that's not my responsibility as levels of government. With 3 levels of government in Australia, it can somehow get a bit lost. So I think it was really strong, your message there of who was responsible, who needs to deliver, and where, and making sure that your call really was for, I guess, very, very clear about everyone deserving a level of support and service across the country. So I thought that was really strong as well. So I might just leave it there and say, well done. Congratulations. Great presentation. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for those comments, Amanda. Great analysis. We'll go over to Katrina for your feedback.
I echo Amanda's sentiments around that being a super tangible solution framed presentation, and how you use the information. You're referring to the Royal Commission is really great. I think, you know, sitting here and thinking, this is the solution, this is clearly what needs to be done. It's not that people haven't thought of these things before. It's not that they have been raised with them, and often they've been recommended in lots of different frameworks. But our job is to pitch it in a different way, but also to build on what's been done so that we're not starting from scratch every time. And I felt like that's what your presentation did. It went, there's been some thinking that's been done here. And so now I'm going to take it to the next level and talk to you about how it would be implemented. And I thought that was so fantastic. And to do that in the short time you had, and to pull it together in that way and just be like, here's the policy map, guys, take it, it's there. I can see Amanda and Luke will be drafting it into their platforms, I'm sure, ahead of the next election. I just also want to flag that, you know, when we're thinking about pitch, we often talk about a vision, barrier, cause, action framework. And you really went barrier, cause, action. So here's the problem, here's the cause and why people haven't been thinking about it, and here's the action. And just starting with that vision, like starting with what the world looks like when you've achieved what you've achieved, is a really good way to point to people why that thing is needed. But yeah, it was just amazing. And it's really, you can see that you guys have connected really well in the short time that you've had together.
Perfect, thank you. And also, Katrina, thank you for putting your email in the chat so the young people can follow up with you as well. Over to you, Elsa. I can see your mic is unmuted.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, great job. I really loved hearing your pitch. I think it was great for a whole range of different reasons. I think, yeah, the structure of it was very purposeful for your target audience as well. The thing that I liked the most about your pitch is that you you described the work that is already happening in our communities or at some localized services. And I think that that's really meaningful, because so often when we have these conversations, it's there's a hint of like, oh, if only there was a solution. And the place that is often ignored is in the communities where people are creating, you know, the solutions to these issues all the time, and where we are drawing on the skills and the knowledge that we have. But so often that ends up getting overlooked. And I really loved the framing of your pitch, which was like, you actually don't have to come up with the solution. You just have to provide the support and the funding for the thing that we already know works and that we have evidence for in our communities. You just have to ask us what is useful, and we will tell you and direct you there. And I think that was a really great strengths-based approach, which shows us that we already have the solutions in our communities, and also, yeah, is really targeted about whose responsibility it is, because it's not, these things are not being done not because they are unknowable and not because they are impossible. It's because people decided that they weren't important enough to put the resources towards. And I think that you communicated that in a really powerful and yet palatable and appropriate way. So yeah, I reckon that was awesome. Thanks so much.
Perfect, thank you. And over to you, Honourable Assistant Minister. And there's also a question in the chat from Kay, who is a part of the Victorian team, but unfortunately she couldn't be there in person today, but she has asked a question in the chat as well, if you would like to address that.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, first of all, to the Myon Victorian team, thank you very much for your pitch. Once again, great pitch and really enthusiastic, and really appreciate listening to you today about what is important to the Victorian team. Your main focus, I think, was on mental health and education, which of course is extremely important. It's very important to the Australian government as well. And one of the things that you said was that, you know, we want people to know that you are not crazy, that there should be no guilt in relation to mental health. And you're absolutely right. These are messages that not just myself as Assistant Minister for Youth and Employment Services, our Assistant Minister for Mental Health, and our other ministers from the Prime Minister down, it's really important messaging. And I feel that Australia is listening to that mental health now is much more spoken about. There's more people speaking about it, and it's no longer had the stigma that it had previously. I think one of the panelists mentioned as well that everyone is deserving of a level of support and service across the country. I think Amanda said that, and that is so true. I think as well, for me, it's also about, well, we're putting in record funding into all these different aspects, whether it's $6.5 billion into mental health, or funding into closing the gap, which we've learned a lot from that, or into education. Yet there's obviously still issues that we need to work through. And the big issue with schools, I think, and I understood what you were saying about with primary schools, we need to teach from an early age. But what a lot of teachers say to me, and the pushback that we get, is around the crowded curriculum, that there's just no more time in the day. So what do we put in? What do we take out? In my own experience from going to local schools in my area, and just so many different days, whether it's Catholic schools, state schools, around diversity, I feel that Australia is very much moving in the right direction. So I want to say that because I want to give you hope. A lot of young Australians based on through the policy framework that we've been working through is that young Australians don't feel listened to, that they have mental health issues based on a whole range of issues not being listened to in climate and so forth. I do want to give people hope that your voice is being heard, and it is really important. Obviously, some of the areas where the federal government is investing in education as well, you mentioned, the Mayan team mentioned around the National Headspace program, and we're expanding that at the moment, putting another 279 billion. The other million, I should say, not billion. The other thing that I think has been working well, I know in my own schools up in Queensland, is the 250 million or so that we put in through the National Chaplaincy Program. It might not be as big in Victoria, it's particularly big in Queensland, but I've seen these chaplains work really well at bringing diversity and inclusion and dealing with mental health, referring them on to the right specialists as well, psychologists. So that's something that I think we can continue to work on as well. In relation to the question, I might be able to, sorry, I'll just pull that up again. I'm just having a look, sorry, at the question. Out of the pitch, what do you recognise existing known knowledge as current government power? Yeah, look, I think absolutely that the current government is aware of some of what you've said today, and I really appreciate that, and I'll certainly pass it on to other senior ministers. Part of our youth policy framework I mentioned before, we're doing further roundtables around the country, and one of those soon will be with Assistant Minister for Mental Health, the Honourable David Coleman MP as well, so I can pass on that to him. Was there any surprises in relation to the planned policies, that issues that echo the issues the Victorian team has raised? I wouldn't say there was any surprises there. I have heard some of these and I've been feeding those in. So I guess what the Mayan Victorian team emphasised is what I've heard previously. So I do want to thank you for what your pitch today and congratulate you on what you've said. So I think I'll just leave it at that. And if I can contribute to the chat afterwards, I will, to address those needs further.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, for those comments, Lou. And Victorian team, again, a fantastic job. Could we please give a huge round of applause to the Victorian team? Perfect. And that is all the pitches for today. Thank you so much to all the online delegates for coming online and sharing everything that you worked on today. And I'd like to say a massive thank you to all our 4 guests that have joined us today. Katrina Georgie, Shadow Minister Amanda Rushworth, Honourable Assistant Minister Luke Howarth, and Elsa Tuart-Rosenberg. We really thank you for taking your time out of your Sunday to come here, listen to these pitches, and again, for sharing your wealth of experience, knowledge, and I'm sure the young people have taken something away from it and can do more things with it. Right now, we will go into a short 10-minute break. The guests, feel free to leave. Again, thank you so much for joining us. All the delegates will be back at 3 p.m. Thank you so much.
Oh, I want to hear the Vic team's final note.
To you, Victor. I didn't have time, but if you had anything to say, feel free to say.
I'm gonna go. We were just saying, because I just turned 18 and we have some parliamentarians on the panel, we were wondering what are your commitments in the next election beyond funding? I remember Mr. Howard was saying how there's hope, but we need tangible actions as opposed to just throwing money at things as well. We need that co-designing that we were talking about, and real community efforts as well, a part of the funding and the programs that are already existing. So what are you doing to help that and assist multicultural youth with their mental health specifically?
That is a great question. I think because we're wrapped up for a quick break, I'm not too sure if we'll get a response. But yeah, keep that on tab, and hopefully we can get that back to you. But I think for the next 9 minutes, we'll take a quick break unless someone has anything to say. But yeah, feel free to take a break, and we'll be back at 3 p.m. Welcome back, everyone, to the last, unfortunately, sadly, the last segment of Fuse 2021. We're in the last hour on the home stretch. And can I just say a massive, massive congratulations to all of you for putting your amazing pictures out there to high-level decision makers. I was completely blown away. I think the Mayan team is completely blown away as well to do that. And I think almost without all of you being strangers on the first day to now delivering pictures together, holding hands, delivering well thought out solutions and pitches in the matter of maybe 5-6 hours of working time. I think that is pretty incredible. And also massive shout out to the online group who have presented as well. It's definitely not easy to do it completely remotely. So next of all, I will pass it on to Mayan's National Manager, Rana, for the next proceedings.
Thank you so much, Connor. Lovely to see you all. Here is Rana. I'm the National Manager for Multicultural Youth Advocacy Network. Between me and you, I tried to cut my hair today myself because I couldn't go to a hairdresser and it didn't went well, so I had to remove my hair from my face. And also I wear red and a necklace that is my father's gift, so I never separated from myself. I'm speechless actually. A big shout out to you all. I will come back to you with more of conversation about today later on, but now I should introduce 2 amazing projects that we have. We are very lucky to have a group of young people who are very talented. They are extraordinary, and I'm really proud and really honored to have all of them. We call them YCDC. Grace said it right. I'm an ACDC fan. Don't consider my age, but I love their name because of that as well. And we have 2 of these amazing young people here today with us. I cannot see Cindy, but I can see Grace Edwards and Marcus online, that they will talk to you later about their project and what they're doing. They're doing some amazing jobs for a submission for Royal Commission. And we are very honored and very pleased to have a really good relationship and a long-term relationship and friendship with Red Cross Australia. Because of that great relationship, we are in the process of co-designing work with Red Cross on co-designing a piece for a prototype. I still cannot call it any outcome for the social cohesion that I believe James and Pallavi should be here to talk about it and introduce these 2 projects to us. So I don't get more time. I leave the floor to them, the virtual floor to them. I think we will start with the YCDC to talk about their projects, and then we go to Red Cross or RedX.
Thanks, Rana. I hope you can see me now. It's Cindy. I'll share my screen for a little PowerPoint presentation. Give me 2 seconds. Hopefully everyone can see that. Okay, so we're the Youth Count Disability Collective, and a little bit more about ourselves. So we started me as co-chair of the group, as well as Grace. We met up when Mayan, I think a year or 2 ago, were approached by the Disability Royal Commission in potentially making a submission. Mayan, having no real experience with the disability sector, reached out to me and Grace, and we did a lovely panel together, and we found that there were so many gaps in this intersection, and we wanted to explore and connect even more, and we created this group of amazing young people. We have a couple here that we'll get to introductions in a little bit, but yeah, we wanted to create this group with the purpose to connect young people, that's meant to say with disability from cowed communities, and to advocate for the needs of those who live in that intersection. Yeah, and we just found it to be a really underexplored intersection, and something that's really important to our lives and our lived experience. And I'm just going to pass on to our lovely members to introduce themselves. Oh, wait, I'm top of that list. So my name is Sanilu. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm calling in from the land of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. And I am currently studying. I'm a youth advocate. I do a lot of stuff in the disability advocacy world. I was recently nominated and appointed as advisory council member for the new Australian disability strategy, as well as I do mental health advocacy, youth advocacy, and all of the above based on my lived experience. Yeah, fun fact about me. When I was 2, I recently found a book that I wrote when I was 2, said I wanted to be a flower when I grew up, which dream crushing, I can't be a flower. I'll pass on to Grace.
Hi everyone, my name is Grace Edward. I use she, they pronouns, and I am joining from Yagara and Turrbal country in Minjin, Brisbane. I'm currently working with Queensland Health and Mater Hospital in Brisbane, coordinating a COVID-19 project specifically targeted at sharing information with culturally and linguistically diverse communities. Fun fact about me is I'm actually an artist by professional background. So I write a lot of theatre plays, poetry, and I've directed about 4 plays now in Queensland, exploring being a third culture child and a person of colour living on stolen land. I will pass on to Zahira.
Hi everyone, my name is Zahira Kasiji. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm on Yagara land in Brisbane. I'm studying at the moment. I'm studying a social work degree, as well as I'm working with Grace and the COVID project here in Queensland. And a fun fact about me is that I just had a massive op on my leg, so I'm currently in a cast, which is fun, but I will pass it on to Marcos.
Thank you. My name is Marcos. I use he, him pronouns. I'm coming to you from Wurundjeri land. I work as a social media consultant for Optus. I start tomorrow. And a fun fact about me is that I actually tweet fun facts. And I believe the more we know about the world around us, the better we'll be and the more harmonious we'll be between people. Yes, and thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Thanks all members for introducing themselves. We are missing Varsha and Ash, but they're also other amazing members of our collective. I'll pass on to Grace now.
Great, thank you, Cindy. To give a brief overview of our webinar that we did at the end of last year on cultural identity and disability, sharing our diverse perspectives as young people with disability. During this webinar, we were able to cover topics like education, cultural taboos and or beliefs about people with disability. We're also able to talk about the disability services at the moment and what's lacking and what isn't there, and how disability support services can better reach young people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. We found that we had similar and unique experiences as young people with disability from CUL backgrounds, and we wanted to share these experiences with other young people, the sector and the Disability Royal Commission. We also explored key themes such as community and identity, employment, education, and the the impact of COVID-19 on people with disability from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. If you are interested, there is a recording of this webinar that you can watch. If Matika or Andrew are online, I'm pretty sure they'll be able to share the link with you, or that will be also shared with you in a future day. But yeah, that's one of the things that we've done together as YCDC since we formed. I'll now pass on to Zahira.
I'd just like to firstly apologize if you can hear anything in the background. So for me, the recommendations that we decided to do for the Royal Commission is, so this was the second webinar that we did as a team. This was the first one that I was a part of. And we wanted to further engage with the sector on how we believe that they have not been exactly helpful to disability, to people with disabilities as well as in CAL backgrounds, and how that intersects and how we could possibly make it better for others. We also wanted non-young people to understand where we're coming from as young people. So we recorded ourselves again, explaining how we would speak to these sort of topics, as well as how we speak to one another and how we discuss these things as a team, and how we really do enjoy each other's conversation because of these type of topics and all those sort of things. So yeah, the recording will go around. I will now pass it on to Marcos, I believe.
Okay, so what we want to do in 2022 is to build on the work that we've done. We want to further utilize our lived experiences as young people with a disability from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, and just to help connect with other young people and inform the sector, and just continue our advocacy work, run training sessions, provide intersectional lived experience consultations, and yes, and just see where the year takes us. You know, we're always coming up with new ideas and new avenues to explore, and we'd love to continue that. I'll pass it on to Grace.
Yeah, thank you. If you would like to engage further with us or get in contact, the best way to reach us is through Mayan, through that email that's been shared. You can also scan the QR code. We are recruiting at the moment for more members to join us, for more young people with lived experience of disability to come and join this collective, because this experience is not ours alone, and we would like to create a bigger platform for young people with disability to join us and to find, I guess, the sense of connection, sense of togetherness that we've been able to find within each other, and continue doing this advocacy work with us. So if you know anyone also that would like to join this, please share it with them. And we may have time for a few questions if anyone has a question for us.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that pitch. We really appreciate, I mean, not that pitch. Thank you so much for that presentation. I think it's very important, the work that you do, and it's a group that is underrepresented. I think we spoke about this a lot this weekend, about the intersectionality that exists in, or even in the diverse, multicultural diverse space. So did anyone have any questions? So we have a question from Kay. I'm wondering if the collective has anyone from a contemporary migrant background.
Do you want me to take that one, Cindy, or do you want to? Yeah. We don't at the moment have anyone on the collective from a contemporary migrant background, but we are open to anyone from that perspective joining our group. Thank you.
And also, not a question, but just a huge fan of the work that you all do. I guess I had a question around, for example, for me, I'm not part, I don't have the lived experience of a person with disability, but is there any ways I can be a good ally, or how can I support your organization? Could you give some tips or something like that?
I guess, yeah, Cindy, go ahead.
We're gonna step out each other's toes. But yeah, no, that's a great point. I think talking about these issues, because I know in a lot of multicultural communities, it is a hard topic to talk about, and breaking down that stigma is really important. But in terms of a professional sense, we are promoting ourselves as lived experience, intersectional lived experience consult, people who can do consults or trainings. We also do, making your workplace more inclusive and from an intersectional perspective.
Anyone else like to add on? Feel free to add on from anyone from YCDC. Did we have any other questions for YCDC? We have the chat. Feel free to take yourself off mute as well, if you would like to ask a question. And again, just another question from, just to add on from Kay, that she does have connections to the mental health peer workspace. If YCDC would like to partner with Origin, she's happy for you guys to connect with her, or likewise. Is there any way that she can connect with you, maybe an email or maybe a social media account you could message?
Yeah, we're quite small at the moment. The best way to contact us would be through Martika, the Youth Leadership Officer at Mayan, and we work really closely with Mayan. So I think that would be the best place to connect with us.
Perfect, thank you. We might give it about 10 more seconds. We'll do an auction style. If no one pops up with a question, we'll move on to the next presentation. Alrighty, it's going. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Thank you so much, YCDC team, for all the work that you do. You guys are pioneers in the space, and I think we need more young people like you pushing out there, doing new things, setting new boundaries. So really appreciate all the work that you do. And if there's anything we could do to help, this Fuse 2021 group would be more than happy to help you. Thank you for your presentation. Next up, I would like to introduce the team from Red Cross to do their presentation.
Hi, everyone. Lovely to meet you. I'm just going to try and share my screen, and hopefully you will just see the presentation and not my scrolled notes. Are you seeing anything right now? Just double checking. Yeah, is that a thumbs up?
Perfect, we can see that.
Just a presentation. Okay, wonderful. Well, first of all, hi everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us to be a part of today. Hi Rana, nice to see you again. We really extend a lot of gratitude for you guys inviting us to be a part of today and for us to present here. We are the team from Red Cross, as the host just said, and we're going to talk to you about this amazing project that we have been working on with in collaboration with Mayan. So I am going to obviously provide a very high-level overview, and it's going to be maybe a little bit rushed because of time constraints, but please know that we will leave our contact details, and there will be many, many more opportunities to open conversations about this project and for you guys, for anyone really to get involved in the next phase of the project. And we would love to hear any suggestions, questions, ideas whatsoever. So yeah, it will be high level, but lots of opportunities for us to connect later on. Okay, so a quick overview of this project. The purpose is to provide an opportunity for young migrants, refugees, and people seeking asylum between the ages of 18 and 25 to have direct and effective input into the development of an initiative that impacts their lives. The project will and does support Mayan and Red Cross's shared vision of ensuring that people have their humanitarian needs met, feel safe, and can actively participate in our communities and have a sense of belonging. So between November and December 2021, we've embarked on a very exciting, very fast-paced 8-week co-design journey to unpack the barriers and opportunities for youth settlement in Australia across one or more of the domains from Mayan's National Youth Settlement Framework, which I'm sure many of you are quite aware of, but very roughly, high level, the domains within that framework are economic participation, social participation, civil civic participation, and personal well-being. The exact outcomes and outputs of this project, as Rana mentioned earlier, and I'm so glad that, there is that emphasis on that ambiguity and that the value of that ambiguity, but the exact outcomes and outputs of this project will be determined by the co-design crew. And we have two amazing representatives of that co-design crew with us today to share some of the ideas that we've all come up with as a team and we've all developed thus far. However, we do envision that in this time, we will have identified, tested, and validated an impactful initiative to be developed and implemented in 2022. As part of this project, the co-design crew have been developing their capacity to mobilize people and create social change, building their networks and connecting with like-minded individuals, delivering a humanitarian project that has a meaningful impact on young people's settlement experience in Australia, and receiving remuneration and a digital credential to acknowledge their time, contributions, and capabilities developed. I just realized that I didn't formally introduce myself. So before we jump onto the next slide, it's never too late. My name is Pallavi. I am a service designer at Australian Red Cross. I work within the Refugee Settlement Program. You will be hearing from a couple of my other colleagues and our amazing co-design crew who will introduce themselves. But yes, I am dialing in from Ghana country today, and I pay my respects to the traditional owners. And now we are going to hear from our co-design crew. We're going to hear our top 3 ideas from the co-design process. But before we jump into that, my colleague Grosvenor is just going to take you guys through a bit of a feedback process that we'd like to use to gather everyone's feedback on our ideas. And there's just a couple of instructions as to how to do that in a way that is easy and accessible for everyone. So over to you, Gross.
Hello, everyone. My name is Grosvenor, and I'm joining you today from Gadigal country in Sydney. My pronouns are he, him, and I have brown hair and I'm wearing a blue top. Thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited to have the opportunity to sort of bring you into the messiness of this co-design project and share with you all as to where the project is at. So we thought this is a great opportunity, given that this project is directly addressing the needs of a lot of the people in attendance today. We wanted to use this as an opportunity to sort of gain some rapid feedback to help us on this sort of sprint process. To do so, we have set up a little bit of a poll that we would like you to bring up on your device as you listen to the pictures that sort of follow. To do this, you can scan the QR code on screen, or you can go to menti.com and put in the code 10563205. If you miss these instructions, I'll pop them in the chat as well so that you can grab access to that poll throughout the pictures. But you'll basically see a series of questions which we just wanted to get your opinion on in terms of 3 criteria which might help us prioritize our ideas. So as you hear the pictures, we ask you to think about whether it's addressing a real need, whether it's desirable for our target users, and whether you think it's likely to have a positive impact. We will then ask you to kind of rank the ideas and provide any additional feedback that you might have in an anonymous sort of way. Finally, if anyone is interested in participating in this project in the new year, there's also an opportunity to sort of capture your details so that we can stay in touch with you. But I'm going to hand it over to Pallavi now to share our first idea.
Amazing, thank you. All right. In response to the how might we question around supporting the sector to improve settlement services and experiences, one idea that we developed as a crew was a documentary show for TV and streaming platforms that took audiences through the settlement journey of a handful of families and individuals who had newly arrived to Australia. What this show could do is inform the broader Australian community and decision makers and connect them to newly arrived community members in a way that is holistic and genuine, to show that refugees, people seeking asylum, and migrants are whole human beings beyond their experience of migration. This idea would bridge the gap in empathy between the broader Australian community and sector organisations towards newly arrived migrants. It demonstrates the power of storytelling when the act itself belongs entirely to those we are hearing from. Finally, this idea provides an opportunity for holistic media representation and a network of informed and engaged supporters across the country. And now we're going to hear our second idea.
Hello, everyone. My name is Arlene. I'm one of the co-designers. Our second idea is a potluck picnic project. This is due to the problem that we found that many newly arrived and youth migrants in any time of their journey have a sense of social isolation and cultural exclusion, as well as language barriers when they first arrive, and there's a very heavy expectation to assimilate. So our potluck picnic project has the aim to connect all type of migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, as well as Australians or settled people in Australia that would like to make part of a cultural exchange through food and language. We will be doing this in a neighborhood or parks where people can come together, share a meal, and also share a bit of their culture and language. We will also like to have maybe some kind of online event or hosting platform for when physical reunions are not possible, or those who are a bit more remote can join. And we will expect this to bring a lot of social connection and a sense of belonging and community building, as well as create multiculturalism and empathy with one another, and not use merely tokenism as we tend to feel happens in society often. And now I will pass to the last idea from my co-designer, Harry. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Hi, everyone. My name is Harry, and I am from Jadwajali country in Victoria. So the third idea is based around mental health, and it's a less formal group-based arrangement that's ideally run by professionals with lived experience of migration. And so activities could include yoga, meditation, or DIY projects. And the problems being addressed are lack of access to mental health services, that the facilities may be culturally inappropriate, and that mental health is not prioritized by many cultures. And the benefits to this approach would be, it would make it more comfortable for young migrants to seek help. And it's also less formal than heading to a psychologist, and it creates social networks. And mental health, positive mental health. Thank you. I'll pass it on to Groves.
Thank you, Harry and Arlene, and thank you to everyone that had the opportunity to jump into the poll and provide some rapid feedback as you heard those pitches. We really, really appreciate it as we sort of embark on the next stages where we're hoping to prototype and test these ideas with the view of prioritizing one idea to develop in the new year. If you didn't have the opportunity to complete that poll, feel free to do so in your own time using the instructions I popped in the chat. But just to wrap up our presentation, I just wanted to share some of the opportunities that we can sort of foresee in the future for others to be able to participate in this work. We're really interested in hearing from young people who are interested in participating in the second phase of the project, where we'll move from co-designing to co-producing and implementing the idea we decide to pursue further. We're hoping to gain funding and endorsement for a second phase and open up additional opportunities for paid youth participation in co-design. And we're particularly interested in hearing from young people with lived experience of migration, people looking to develop their social change leadership skills, and people with technical and creative skills in areas such as product development, communications, and design to bring our ideas to life. We're a very welcoming crew, and anyone that's interested in reaching out, please do. Just in case there's also some industry practitioners or orgs on the call who also may be interested in supporting the implementation of this project, we're also super interested in hearing from you for things such as how these ideas might reach your networks once they're developed, as well as more formal opportunities such as partnership and funding. We really want to ensure that this is a mutually beneficial experience for all involved. And our door is open if there's anything during today's presentation that piqued anyone's interest, or if you have any further questions and would like to know more about the work we do or our approach to co-designing with people with lived experience. To do this, you can email either myself or Pallavi via the contact details you see here on screen. Or if you leave your details in the poll, we'll be back in touch with you as further opportunities arise. But to wrap up, I just want to thank you all so much for the time, for giving us the space to share this really exciting project. And I just want to extend my gratitude for all the wonderful work each of you are doing in advocating and participating in support for multicultural young people across Australia. And we hope you all enjoy the rest of the summer and look forward to continuing the conversation. I'm not sure if we've got any time left, so I'll hand back to the host, but if we do, we're more than happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that presentation, Red Cross. If anyone has any last questions, feel free to pop them in the chat while I do the wrap up. A massive thank you to Pallavi, Rosvina, Harry, and Arlene. Apologies if I mispronounced any of your names. Thank you for that presentation. I think it's great that there are opportunities for the delegates to get involved in any of the projects. Feel free to get involved. I think on the Mentimeter there was opportunities for you to write your details down if you want to get involved. But yeah, anyone has any questions? Otherwise, thank you so much, the Red Cross team, and I think it's an amazing project, and we're excited to see what the most popular one was and what the one that gets implemented first. Thank you so much for your time. And I'll hand it over to Rana to wrap up day 2 and the end of Fuse 2021.
Well, Rana here. I'm still speechless, but I cannot actually, to be honest, believe that it's the end of 2 amazing days. I would like to start with acknowledging the traditional owners of the land, the Wurundjeri people of the land of the Kulin Nation that I'm meeting you now. Well, I want to start with acknowledgement and appreciation. Acknowledgement of the traditional owners and the Torres Islanders and people that we had on board during these 2 days. Also, I want to extend this acknowledgement to the elders of our communities. I know that our elders are treasures of our communities and our families, and the culture will transit and will pass on through their stories. And we are very lucky to have our elders in each community to hear the stories and move it forward. I hope we can move forward the best of each culture. I have a huge shout out to states and territories, advisory groups and committees that were with you. Also a huge thank you to the youth ambassadors. You did an amazing job. It's not just these 2 days, it's few months, and I need to get back to the extraordinary and amazing Mayan team. Call them by name, one by one, huge, and I want you to have your hands up for Martika Shakur. She did an amazing job. She's going to add the experts in having complex events in 6 states and territories in her resume. And huge thanks to Shannon White for the expert perspective of the work she brought in and the support that we had from her. A huge thank, without any English, technical expert and viz, Andrew Dong. And but again, please applaud for him. He did an amazing job behind the scene. We had a really amazing comms team who had all of these nice pictures, putting everything on social media. Dr. Alisa and Diana Lopez, please have an upload for them as well. And we were really, really lucky to have a professional MC. I was amazed. Huge thank you to Kano. Well, I need to be very impartial, so I have to say each one of the pitches was my favorite. I loved absolutely all of them, but I picked up one word for you from each state and territory. First of all, I have to mention, Shannon is right. We had the comment here in the small room behind the scenes that now we regret we didn't have a better name for the online group. I guess it should be Australia group. And next time, it's a good thing to keep in mind. But I will start with New South Wales. Your storytelling was amazing. I absolutely loved it. Thank you for sharing those beautiful stories and picking up the best. Tasmania, thank you so much for showing vulnerability and willingness to learn. Queensland, it was the united front and the connectivity that I got from you. Thank you so much. Western Australia, I love the holistic approach for the solutions that you had. Thank you so much for that. The Australia group, thank you so much for picking up such a good topic. The intergenerational trauma is really important. It's something that not touched that much. Victoria, thank you so much for having the evidence-based solution and building on something that already exists. I think these are the strongest parts of your pitches. And what I want to mention here is we are not leaving these pitches. We keep them and we move them forward. And I think we have really good activities in 2022 to showcase them, to work more on them. And I want to invite each one of you to continue the connection with us, communicate with us, stay in touch, and let's hope that we can move forward a strong and a new narrative for policy and advocacy. I guess that you're all really tired, but I'm going to share some of the visions that we are going to have for 2022 Mayan. Mayan is planning to and having some negotiation for racism to submit for a national anti-racism framework. We are in negotiation with Australian Human Rights Commission to have youth-specific consultation and have the voice of young people from refugee and migrant background in that national framework. I want to invite all of you to participate and join us and have your voice over there. For climate, we are in conversation with the Department of Environment, and we want to work strongly on having multicultural advocates for climate change and being good allies for the First Nation and especially the Torres Islander people to support them in their activities in climate action. So bring it forward. If you have any idea, let us know. And I guess we already heard a lot of good things that we can do and start from ourselves and add it to the conversations. For Red Cross, you have seen what we are doing. So if you have something in mind, we are still open to have ideas and have more conversation. And I believe both Mayan and Red Cross are always happy to hear from you. So it will affect anything about social cohesion that we are doing, and it's really important. What else we have? We have an opportunity. We are still not done with you. You need to do the evaluation and tell us and have a reflection of how you went on and how you like us to continue, and also adding to what we had. We had a really challenging time with COVID. It's even the Fuse, having you in all states and territories is an impact from an outcome from what we had during COVID, but we didn't want to disappoint our young ambassadors. They stayed with us for the COVID time. They were really patient with us, and we really missed them to see them in person, and we still did not see them. And that's why I'm going to invite them, if they like, if they have time, we still like to keep them on board and have them for the next year, but also to announce that in that evaluation forms that you are having, you're going to have an opportunity to express your interest if you're going to join them and be a buddy for our young ambassadors who are there, or an ambassador. So please let us know. And I think that's it from me. If I'm missing anything, I'm shouting out to the team. Okay, so they don't have anything to add. They just say hello, and don't be a stranger. We are always happy to hear from you, and everything we do is based on what we're hearing, and we love to have you on board. Thank you so much. Have a lovely time. I know that you're off and don't have uni, or you're going to holidays, so enjoy your holidays and come back to us next year with more energy, even more than today. I've seen your energy, but I loved it. I've seen this tired word in the middle. I hope we will not see that one anymore. Good luck. Thank you.
Perfect. Can we give a huge round of applause to Rana? I think that was a beautiful way to end off Fuse 2021. And that will formally close us at Fuse 2021. We'd like to thank can we also get a huge round of applause for all the Yan members who've been with you throughout this conference? And lastly, could we get a huge round of applause for all of you guys, because this conference would not be what it is without all of you delegates. So a round of applause for the delegates, please. And that is where we will finish off our webinar for today. We'd like to thank all of our attendees. Can we give a huge round of applause for our attendees who've joined us for the day and heard your pitches? Thank you so much, attendees. We hope you got something out of it. As you can tell, the young people here are fired up. They're wanting to create change. If you have any opportunities, feel free to get in touch. And we thank you for taking time out of your Sunday to join us today. So this is where we will end our official webinar. The delegates, just to let you know, there will be an informal Zoom call after this. Please join that. It will be the same link as this morning. We'll post in the WhatsApp chat and in here today, but this is where we will end the formal webinar. Thank you once again, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your night. Thank you.
Thank you.